My name is Andrea Freedman, and I'm the president and CEO of the Ottawa Jewish Federation and Foundation. It's really my pleasure to be here with you today to moderate the panel on nonprofit leadership, which is a very unique panel because our five panelists are all, not only are they philanthropists, but they're also leaders. So they give both of their time and their resources, which is very unique. I want to maximize our time here together, so I'm not going to read out all their bios. I will just sort of take one or two salient facts from each of their bios to save a little bit of time. So Debbie Halton-Weiss is somebody I know quite well, as she's the chair of the Ottawa Jewish Federation. She's also the founder and imaginator of Dragon Boat Israel, which I'm sure she'll tell us a little bit about today. Chuck Merovitz is a partner at Merovitz Potechin and is also the 2011 recipient of AFP's Volunteer Fundraiser of the Year Award, which should tell you everything you need to know about his fundraising background. Jeff Miller is a partner at Ginsberg, Gluzman, Fage, and Levitz. He has had many community involvements. Most notably, in 2010, he stepped up to the plate to chair Hillel Lodge's capital campaign of $5 million. Fred Seller is a founding partner of BrazeauSeller, and he's the co-chair, amongst many other responsibilities, of the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation's Courage campaign. And finally, certainly not least though, but last on the long table over here, is Moishe Smith. Moishe is the owner of Richfield Services, and his claim to fame, amongst many, is really from 2006 to 2009, being the first ever non-American president of B'nai B'rith International, which is quite an honor, and as a former member of the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, I say thank you. Maybe we will get right down to business, and I will ask everybody on the panel just really what prompted your involvement as a donor and a community leader? Moishe, do you want to start, maybe?
Sure. In our family, we tell the famous story about how we learned how to be fundraisers at our father's knee. For some of you that know my dad or know the history of the Smith family in Ottawa, you know we came from very, very humble beginnings. My grandfather was a shoemaker on St. Patrick Street. And my dad, I'm one of 10 children that my dad had to cope with as he was trying to feed us all and make a living for his family. And I found it always very interesting to watch my dad, because if my dad had $3, he'd give $3 of it away if somebody needed it. It was the most amazing... Yay for. It was the most amazing thing to see. So all of my brothers and sisters and I, we learned very, very well, really at my dad's knee. He gave us a perfect example of how to give back to a community and how to share our success with the community that gave so much to us as we were growing up, and the success in our business life and otherwise. And I think it's a lesson that most of the families in Ottawa have learned from their parents, as philanthropy and tzedakah is passed on from generation to generation, as we all know.
Thank you.
Well, my name, as Andrea said, my name is Fred Seller. I grew up in Montreal. I witnessed the kindness of others early on in life. I attended a community camp, Camp B'nai B'rith. At least it is a community camp in Montreal. And it was, but for the generous support of the Jewish community in Montreal, I don't know that I would have had the childhood I had. They were very kind to myself, my brothers, and many other children. At one time, I think there were up to 1,000 young people attending that camp, and 80% of them were on subsidy. So I learned early on that this is the way, it's time to pass on and to pay it forward, and ever since, that's been my goal.
Moving on. I also came from Montreal. I'm an import. My wife's an Ottawa resident, or born in Ottawa, and she brought me in. I was very fortunate in Ottawa, particularly, that I worked for Jerry Levitz. I don't know if many people here know who Jerry Levitz is, former president of the Federation. Jerry was very involved in the community, and the minute I got involved, the minute I came into Ottawa, it was a way for me to connect with people. I got involved with the school immediately, sent my children there. I was involved with family services. I think I've been involved with virtually every major agency in this city over the years. I connect with people. I really enjoy working on boards. I really enjoy being involved in the volunteer community. My kids are involved, not as much as I was, because they look at me and say, "Are you nuts?" But it's just something I've really enjoyed, and I've enjoyed giving back to the community. I think it's something that we all have to do, and it's just something I was born with. My father was very involved with the neighborhood in Canada and in Montreal, and it's just something I've always been brought up with.
So I guess the theme that comes out time and time and time again in Jewish community, and I would assume elsewhere, is role models and mentors. And my family is no different. My parents were Holocaust survivors, came to Montreal. It's interesting, 4 out of 5 of us, or 5 out of 6 of us are from Montreal. That's unusual in Ottawa.
That's the secret to volunteers.
And they came and they volunteered the moment they arrived in Montreal and found a sense of community and belonging. And I grew up just understanding that that was what you did and always did. I went on, I think, I got involved in young women's leadership here in Ottawa, and again had a few mentors, where I really felt I was learning how I could contribute, and I was really listened to and felt I had some value. And the thing that went on from there is a couple of us went on a community mission to Israel in '95. And that, I would say, again, we had mentors with us, and it brought us to a new level of contributing in the city. I forgot to say I am the woman on the panel this time, so yeah. And one thing Jessica said in the emerging the next generation topic, that she said, you know, the younger generation, people feel they're selfish and they need to come in it for selfish reasons. I can honestly say I came in it for selfish reasons too. I needed a way sometimes in my life to find reward, gratification, professional enhancement, social life, all those things. I don't think it's changed that much. And that's what it did for me, and it has continued to do for me.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chuck Merovitz. I am also from Montreal. I think actually that there is a significance to so many of us being from Montreal. And I have a feeling that we might not have been so involved in community if we had stayed in Montreal. And I think for all of us, it was a bit of an entree into the Ottawa community. And it was also, it just seemed to be more accessible. And maybe because Montreal was a city with such a vibrant, strong, established Jewish community, that they weren't beckoning for help, whereas it was different here in Ottawa. As everybody has intimated, our parents' role modeling is what got us into the feeling that it was important to give back to community. I remember going with my mother to the bazaars at our synagogue when I was 4 years old. And I might be in charge of a lemonade stand or something. And I've been telling my kids since they were about 6 years old that it's important to work hard, play hard, and give back to community. And I have about 16 nieces and nephews who every year I can get at least 2 requests from them to sponsor them for something for charity. And so we try and teach our children at a very young age how important it is to help those who are less fortunate. And no matter how much you have, you can probably give a little. And I tell a story, there's a great story that a rabbi once told me, that in ancient Israel, there was a tzedakah box, and you only had two choices. You either had to give or you had to take. And we've all chosen to give.
And we're blessed to be able to.
Thank you. Those were all, is this working? Those were all very thoughtful answers. I do need to go on record as saying, although there are 5 Montrealers on this panel, there's only one of us who supported the Montreal Canadiens in the last round of the playoffs. So you can claim your Montreal roots all you want, but...
After you're here a little while longer, Andrea. Yeah.
Let's maybe get down to some business. There are unique features of both being a donor and being a solicitor, and everybody on this panel today serves both of those functions. And I'm wondering if you can just share some insights in terms of the similarities and differences of each group, and perhaps an anecdote about how this is interfaced with your life, with your peer group. Does anybody want to start?
Well, I don't mind starting, only because I don't want Jeff to steal my thunder. In case he heard Jerry make this comment once before in the past, Jerry Levitz was an incredible community individual, an incredible fundraiser, and he taught me something very early on. I once heard him say that he learned from somebody else, and in turn, I've learned from him, that as a Jew, it is every bit as important to ask as it is to give. And those words resonated with me, and they never left me. And so that's what guides me through every campaign that I work on, every fundraising event that I attend, every time I'm asked to give of my time and of myself. I remember those words from Jerry Levitz. And so that's what motivates me, and that's how as far as soliciting and giving, I think if you follow that adage, then there really is no difference between the two. Sorry, Jeff.
So I'll go next if you don't mind. I just want to say that there was a time when Ottawa people would say, they're from Montreal. I want you all to know that. Yes, I'm sure you are. But I have to tell you that after all of these years and the number of Montrealers that have integrated themselves into the Ottawa community, it's my pleasure, and I'm very proud to be on a panel with all these Montreal people. Certainly have added some color to our community, and have turned out to be just like they were born in Ottawa, so it's fantastic. I think as far as asking and giving, I think clearly all of us have an understanding that we're supposed to give. We grew up like that, we understand it, from the little tzedakah box that was in our house to the watching our parents do what they were supposed to do. So we all understand about the giving process to our individual levels. I think that the satisfaction that comes with actually being a fundraiser is pretty terrific. It gives you a chance to interact with your peers. It gives you a chance to encourage them to also be part of the overall community by giving. And it gives us a sense of pride and accomplishment when together, when we give and when we ask, gives us a sense of pride and accomplishment that we've done better for our community and have been able to help make our community better, not only for those less fortunate than us, but for ourselves too. Because we live in an outstanding community as it happens, and I think it all has to do with how we interact with each other in the giving and in the getting process.
My experience is that it's a lot easier to give than to ask. I think that's a much more difficult thing to do. But you can't ask unless you do give. You can't run a campaign, you can't be a donor, or you can't be a fundraiser if you're not prepared to give to your own causes, to what you believe in. Because I would be embarrassed to sit there and say, asking somebody for support, and they say, well, what are you supporting? And I'm going, oh, not really, I can't do that. So I think you have to be a giver first. Once you're a giver, and I agree with Moishe, there is real satisfaction in asking and being able to help others to contribute. I I have my own style, right or wrong. I don't believe in putting pressure on people. I don't believe in saying to somebody it's not enough. I think you have to be extremely thankful for anything anybody does, and you can always ask them for more. But you have to be appreciative of what people are willing to do. And I don't have an antidote. I had a lot of Jerry stories, but none that we can use here. But I think it's, as I said, if you are, the only way you can ask somebody, the only way you can be a fundraiser is if you're committed to a project and you yourself give. That's, I think, critical.
That's fair. I think I'd like to come at this a little bit from the woman's perspective, which is I think women, very generally, are a little more frightened to ask. I know many, many strong women, leaders in the community, who will say, I can do anything but fundraise. Please, don't ask me to fundraise. I'll give you my time. I'll give you more time. Just, that's the last thing I can do. And what I find so interesting about that is the women I know who do fundraise are some of the best fundraisers I've ever seen, because they are passionate, they care, they listen, they build the relationship, they have all the skills that a great fundraiser has. And if you sometimes help that person recognize that, and they have that experience, I know for myself, that's what's happened. I can't fundraise for something I don't believe in, and I can't not give to something I don't believe in. And we can have that conversation. And it's scary at first. It is. And then you get to that first telethon and you try it and you get a few no's because it's a telethon. But then you get the yes and you have that conversation. And it's kind of exciting and it's very gratifying. And you learn there are skills that you can learn, and it comes from there.
So I just have a couple of points. Firstly, I think that there's no more powerful way to ask than to ask somebody, will you join me in supporting this? So it certainly follows what everybody said about you have to make your gift. Secondly, I'm sometimes asked to speak to some novice fundraisers, and what I tell them that's important, firstly, is to educate yourself about the cause, and then hopefully become passionate about the cause. And then your job is not to get the gift from the person you're asking. Your job is to educate the person about the cause. And if you've educated them, you have done your job. And if they don't give, it's because of something in their life, it's because of something in their heart, but you can't take it personally. And once you've educated them, you've done your job.
So I think you've all made very compelling cases about why it's both important to give and ask. But the simple fact remains that too few of your peers actually join you and have stepped up to the plate. How do you deal with the frustration that a select few are continuously asked to do more? Who wants to start? Chuck, maybe we'll start with you, since you had to find innovative things to say on the last question.
Well, you know, it's difficult to judge why somebody isn't giving. And very often, I think, hard feelings are created because assumptions are made about people's ability to give. And then when you don't get a gift that you think is commensurate with their ability to give, then you maybe have hard feelings. But unless you know the person really well, I don't think that we have enough information to justify resentment with respect to the gift that's not being forthcoming. And so I try and be very objective, and as I say, once I've educated them, if they give, great, and if they don't, then I'll ask if I can come back another time.
Fair enough. Does anybody else want to tackle that question? Jeff?
I agree. The problem, I agree that I don't think enough of our peers and our younger people do support what they should be supporting. However, having said that, I completely agree with what Chuck is saying. I don't think you can judge what someone else does, even though I may feel in my heart they should be doing more. I don't think it's right to judge other people. You don't know what any of their circumstances are, for sure. And I think the thing is, you always have to be appreciative of what people do, whatever it is. Whatever little it is, if you're thankful and you're appreciative of it, then the likelihood is they may do more in the future, and they may be willing to do more in the future. If you are resentful or bitter or, give them a hard time, it's not enough, number one, you may lose that gift in the first place, and you're going to turn them off completely. So I think there are maybe circumstances why people don't give as much as they do at a given time, but you've got to keep an open mind, and you've got to keep an attitude that thanks them and appreciative, and let them be able to come back to them in the future.
Sure, and if somebody wants to tackle the question, also addressing it from a volunteer perspective, in terms of not, suppose somebody's an active donor, they've been giving for many years, but don't want to join the ranks of the fundraisers.
But that's not untypical. That, there's some people that are just more comfortable giving. They understand their obligation. They're happy to give, and that's just the way it is. And then you have other people who maybe can't give as much, but would really like to help. And so you have a volunteer where you never expected one. The fact is that I guess somewhere along the way, somebody that you least expect is going to get really motivated and excited about helping you raise the money. And one day, who knows, they may turn into a top donor. You just never know. And you can't just look at somebody and say, well, they can't do it, they can do it, they can't do it. Everybody can do what they can, and everybody wants to feel like they want to be helpful. And then you do have donors that would rather just give you the money and say, I've met my obligation, please come and visit me again next year, here's my gift for this year, and that's where they're at with it. And I think that's reality also.
Sure. Any other thoughts?
Well, like the other gentleman on the panel, I don't pass judgment regarding whether someone wants to give or give their time or assist in fundraising. I really believe in the 80-20 rule. I think it's no different than business. You get 80% of your business from 20%, and I think that holds true for fundraising as well. Be it on the donor side or on the fundraiser side, you're going to get the most value out of 20%. That being said, I believe it's incumbent upon us in our families to teach our children to pass it down. Those of us who are fundraisers and who are donors will, in all likelihood, teach our children the importance of fundraising and donating, and likewise will the Jewish schools, will the synagogues. They will pass on those lessons, and hopefully, that 20% figure grows. It's probably unlikely, but from that 20%, you can conceivably get some very valuable contributing people. And I think if we maintain 20 to 25%, we're quite fortunate.
Fair enough.
I don't have much to add, but I guess the one thing I think of is donors who don't want to be volunteers, you can still go to them for advice, for counsel, for a discussion on how things are spent. And number two, in agreement, it's about resources, and they can be financial or they can be your time. And both count for a lot, and both need to be appreciated equally. And I can honestly say in my position in the last couple of years, when I have gone up to somebody and had a discussion about how they can participate, I can't even think of anyone who has said no to me. And if we've had that, and I'm talking about young people, as Linda said, getting people onto our committees of our board, getting them onto our federation, various things. When I've had that discussion, and I have personally taken the time to have that discussion, they don't say no. And it might be money and it might be time, but it's something for their participation.
Thank you, that's a very good point. Fred, you brought up sort of the 80-20 rule, and you can argue with the exact percentages, but it holds true in almost every business and in every nonprofit organization. As a fundraiser and as representatives of a variety of different fundraising organizations, how do you balance the age-old challenge of broadening your donor base, building your donor base, and yet still giving your top donors, those closest to you, the attention that they need and the attention that they deserve?
Are you directing that question?
No, I used your comment as a segue.
We love the 80-20 rule.
Well, I think the way to go is just what Chuck had said earlier. When I first started as a young gentleman fundraising, the ask and who was asking was what was most important. Now there's so many competing good charities, good organizations, good causes, that you really do have to educate your donor. And I don't know that the level of education was as required 20 years ago as it is today. And as Chuck says, in order to increase the donor base, I think the fundraisers have to be better educated, and in turn they have to be in a position to educate the potential donor, and as Chuck said, ask them to help you with the cause.
Does anybody want to add anything?
That was a good answer.
That was a very good answer. Listen, I come from an environment in B'nai B'rith where we had thousands of members, over 60 countries, and all from different walks of life. And, you know, I like Freddie's 80-20 rule. I wish we had an 80-20 rule in B'nai B'rith. It would have been great for us. We could have really broadened our donor base. In our particular case, it was probably 85-15 or 90-10. 10% of the people gave a lot of the money. And I think that in a mass membership organization like we have, like B'nai B'rith, I think that's just the way it is. It was always very difficult for us to broaden our donor base. People felt that when they joined an organization like B'nai B'rith, they were giving of their time, they were doing good work, they were helping others, and the giving of funds was not necessarily top on the priority list. Thank God we had a 10% rule at least, because it was very, very helpful. But I think the most difficult thing that we all struggle with is the broadening of the donor base and encouraging more people to be involved with you. Somebody said something interesting. Freddie said that we have to teach our kids, and you know, when I was growing up, it was kind of natural there for us. I don't have the experience with how that happens in households today. Are tzedakah boxes still around? Are the next generation learning giving by osmosis like we did? I don't know that, but it would be interesting to know if that still goes on in households today. Certainly when we were young, it went on. So that's just an interesting thing that we might talk about.
Debbie?
Well, I'm not probably going to answer the balancing act question very well because it's a tough one, and I don't have any answers. It's a constant balancing act. But I think something, I guess, I think that on every side, whether it's the top donor or not the top donor in the board, the giver, the asker, that the things that excite them in everything is that we are bringing on the next generation, and if we can show ways we're doing that, if we are bringing in innovative programming as a leader or as a donor, I'm excited. And if we have a mentoring opportunity for those top donors with our younger leadership, I think mentoring, leveraging, and innovation are three things that excite our top donors and excite our leadership. And I found that if we keep that in mind, it works for everybody.
That's a great point.
So I just have a comment. Like Freddie, I'm a fundraiser for the Ottawa Regional Cancer Foundation. And whenever I'm involved, whether as a lawyer-client or meet somebody who appears to be a person of means, I almost inevitably ask, what's your charity of choice? And then I can tell them about my charity of choice. And I've had some significant success with bringing in new donors in that way.
It's a great opening question. What's your charity of choice? Very impressive. I have a question that's somewhat related to the issue of top donors, and I know our organization struggles with this. I suspect that others do as well. We have very, very committed individuals who step up to be part of the formal governance of our organization. They serve on committees, they serve on the board of directors, they're there day in and day out, and they make decisions. At the same time, we have a very dedicated group of top donors who may, or if they're not involved in the governance structure, they probably have a sense that they want to be consulted on certain key issues, and part of my role is to make sure that our top donors remain on side. From your perspectives, how do you balance the need to empower your people who are formally authorized within your governance structure to make decisions with making sure that your top donors are on side with those decisions?
I don't think they have to be on side all the time. I mean, I don't think you cower to your top donors. I don't think that's necessarily the right approach. But I do think consulting them, I do think gaining their trust and gaining their understanding as how they feel and explaining your rationale for things that you do is valid. Because you don't want to lose them as a top donor either in terms of your organization. But I don't believe that they should be running your organization for you. I think that's a bad way to run an organization. I think you have to show proper jurisprudence. You got to consult your lawyers here. Make sure that you follow whatever regulations that you need to follow, whatever governance you need to put in place. And make sure it is in there. Deal with your accountants. Make sure that you're running an organization soundly, appropriately. But I do believe you should talk to your donors. Talk to them, find out what the issues are that affect them, because you don't want to lose them either. But they shouldn't be running your organization. It's a consult.
I agree with Jeff. I might go a little further. You said, how do you get your top donors on side? I think that you have to get your top donors not vehemently opposed. And I think as long as you get them not vehemently opposed, I think that you've done what you have to for proper governance, and you've probably done what you have to maintain the gift.
That's fair. Does anybody want to add anything?
Yeah, I tell you, in my experience, we had 25 top donors, what we would consider top donors to our organization. And we'd invite them once a year to come in. We certainly weren't going to change our whole governance system because of what they had to say, but it gave them an opportunity to express their opinion. It gave us an opportunity to have them feel included in what was going on. And it really was a day well spent. Often you could find some new ideas from them, get how they were feeling, encourage them to invite others to join them in that group of people. So you definitely need to speak with them. But I agree with Jeff, you can't change your whole organizational structure and governance on the whim of somebody who just wants to give you money.
Fair enough. Maybe we'll switch gears a little bit right now. And one of the both challenges and opportunities I think that Jewish organizations find themselves with right now is that more and more members of the Jewish community are becoming involved in other very worthwhile causes, for example, hospitals and universities. And this really presents both a challenge and an opportunity. I'm wondering if you can speak to both the positive or the opportunity part and also the negative, the challenge of it, and talk a little bit about some of the lessons learned and about how you see either Jewish organizations changing or how you think they need to change a little bit more to do business a little bit differently.
I'll start. I see it as a major positive and a challenge in that we cannot take our Jewish donors for granted as we have for many generations. And we can't just work on guilt And we can't just work on
Works from our mother.
You know, yes, we are responsible to the community, but customer service is high on the agenda for many organizations outside of the Jewish community. And we in the Jewish community have to learn customer service far better than we do. And we are hopefully starting to do that, but we have ways to go. And we need, you know, I hear it time and time again. I give, you know, a few $100s to some non-Jewish cause, and I'm, you know, a king and a queen, and I'm treated so beautifully, and I give thousands of dollars to the Jewish community, and I'm, you know.
That's why not more.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And so that's a huge lesson for the Jewish community that we have to learn. And I think having to learn that is important, and it changes the way we do business, and it's a good thing. It's a really good thing. And I still think people need to feel that sense of responsibility to the community and to the entire community, including the federation system, which is a challenge unto itself. But I think it makes us do business better.
I think an important lesson to be learned is the importance of education. I think that, as Debbie said, for so long we just took it for granted that we could expect good donations from Jewish people to Jewish causes. And I was just saying beforehand, I think that our parents' generation gave almost 100% of their charity to Jewish organizations, and it was generally on the basis that non-Jewish people don't support Jewish charities, so Jewish people have to do more for Jewish charities. I think our generation probably primarily gives their donations to Jewish charities, but also gives to other charities that are worthwhile in their view. And I think that our children's generation don't have that bias in favor of Jewish organizations. And I think that if we want them to be donating to Jewish organizations, then we really have to educate them as to why the Jewish organizations are worthy of their money. I mean, a great example is the Jewish National Fund. All our kids are so environmentally conscious, and the Jewish National Fund is probably the first and oldest environmental organization in the world. And we should be trumpeting that.
Chuck, I agree with what you're saying on one hand. On the other hand, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm so proud of the fact that we have Jewish leaders in the non-Jewish community raising significant dollars. The fact that Freddie was co-chairing the Cancer Foundation, I think it's phenomenal. And I'm so proud of the fact when I look at the top donors at the Ottawa Community Foundation that they're Jewish members. They're members of our community. I think it speaks so much. I don't think we're an isolated community, and we shouldn't be an isolated community. But it shouldn't be at the cost of the Jewish charities and the programs we run. So we have to be more creative in getting more dollars, raising our base of donors. But don't take away from the fact that it's not that I want every Jewish dollar to go only to Jewish charities. I think it's phenomenal the way our community, and the Jewish community, supports the overall community. I think it's phenomenal. I'm very proud of that.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that we have to be a little more innovative, and as Debbie said, we have to conduct our business better. We've got to make a better business plan or a better business argument, better business proposal to keep money within the Jewish community. A lot of people donate through their businesses, through their companies, and not all businesses and companies that have Jewish proprietors or owners or partners are necessarily completely Jewish. They share the ownership, they share the partnership with non-Jews. And you have to be able to make a case, a valid case to your non-Jewish partners and your non-Jewish co-owners and your managers to say, we are going, as an organization, going to support this Jewish cause. And when you're competing against hospitals and cancer foundations, that's a difficult plea to make. That really is, and I think there's something that's, there's a term out there right now called donor fatigue. And unless your case is compelling enough, then you're going to fall to the bottom. And I think it's a real challenge. I think the fact that Jewish money and Jewish attention and Jewish energy is going outside the Jewish community makes it a real challenge to keep the money within the community. And I don't think there's any argument that there certainly has to be funds that are lost to the community as a result. So as Debbie said, we have to be a little more innovative from here on in.
I would only make a small comment. There's statistics around somewhere. I'm not a big in statistics kind of a guy, but there are statistics around that talk about the percentages and the amounts of Jewish money that support culture, education, community projects. In the general community, that's all Jewish money. And it's a source of pride, obviously, for our community, but we can't, it's the age-old problem, by the way, for all of us, for communities, for organizations, for everything that goes on, is how do we make sure that our institutions are supported while being generous to the general community also. We don't like to say one or the other, but it has to be a good balance of both. I think we do well in the support of the general community structure. My fear is that over time it will be to the detriment of our institutions.
Sure. So I have one final question before opening it up to the floor, and I think there's 2 microphones right in the center of the room. I guess my last question is, I think we all know that passion and a personal attachment to the cause is critical when fundraising. So I have a somewhat controversial question to ask you, which is very simple. With respect to fundraising in the Jewish community, does the fundraiser who asks you for money have to be Jewish?
I think, okay.
No,
I think it's an easy answer. Yes.
Well, I'll go back to my point before. I think you have to support the organization that you're going to ask for money for. So if you're not a donor yourself, I think it's difficult for you to go out and ask for money. So if you have somebody who believes in, well, I'll take you a little lunch. Because we don't, by the way, have 100% Jewish residents. So if there was a significant donor who was not Jewish and wanted to help us raise funds, and they were a donor, I 100% would take them on. And I think they can then sell the cause because they believe in the cause. And that's the point. You have to believe in it. So the question is, does a non-Jewish person necessarily believe in Jewish education?
Right.
Right? That's the challenge.
I think it's a very interesting question. And I think, no, really. Because depending on the person, I mean, if you're talking, as Jeff said, somebody who's passionate, if you get like a Christian who's passionate about Israel, who comes to you to try to get you to support, as a Jew, one of the Israeli institutions, that's going to be hard to say no.
An Israeli institution that you might believe in.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, it all starts with what's in your heart and where's your passion, right?
Exactly. So that's what it's really about.
But that's an interesting question.
Any questions from the floor? Please.
I just noticed in one of the personal. Oh, sorry. Do you want to start here?
Oh no, I'm just.
Okay. My name's Paul, and I just was looking at one of the personal profiles here, and it mentions the Jewish value of Tikkun Olam, repairing the world, and I wonder if you might comment about that, just in kind of a general way, or maybe specifics that come up for you as well, examples.
Well, it came up a little bit in the next generation discussion, but there's many organizations, Jewish organizations, that use the repairing the world out there in the world as a way to bring people into the fold. So it's a Jewish organization. You might know, go across the world. You're going to Haiti, you're going to various third world countries with the mission of Tikkun Olam, to repair the world. It is a Jewish organization that's putting it together, but you are going outside of the Jewish community to do that. My daughter was in a program called Avodah in New York, where they had different homes, like co-ops, with 6 Jewish young people in each co-op, and then they went out into the larger community for a year doing work outside of the Jewish community. And it really brings the Jewish community in together, socializing, getting to know one another, doing good deeds, and but they're as a Jewish unit doing it with that value. I don't know if anybody else has.
Thank you. Does anybody want to add anything? I think that summarized it very well. Norman?
You're going to challenge me on something. What did I do wrong?
Number one, I disagree with all of you on fundraising.
Can I say, knowing you for as long as I do, I'm not surprised.
There's only one way to fundraise. 2 people go to see one person, and they walk out with a good gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Secondly, it's interesting that 5 of the 6 are from Montreal. You moved into Ottawa, and I'm not commenting on your ages because I know a lot of you have come to Ottawa and made your mark in Ottawa, and I don't know at what stage you came. But if you look at the Jewish institutions in Ottawa, every synagogue, mortgage-free. The Jewish Community Center, mortgage-free. Hillel Lodge, basically, no. Hillel Lodge owes a mortgage to a Jewish agency. So all in all, one of the things that always bothered me is maybe we should be in debt. Maybe we should have mortgages. Mortgage burning is a great institution in many cities, that if you owe money and you pay off the money, it's an incentive for people to give. And I've often wondered whether that is one of the ways to increase the giving in Ottawa. I'm an old man, I recognize that, but sometimes it's not too late to put in new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody want to?
What do you think of the idea of mortgage burning?
Well, I could say that I, for one, have sat on the Ottawa Jewish Community School Board for quite a while, first with Yitzhak Rabin and now with the larger school board, and there's plenty of debt there. Well, we've tried. I mean, as a board, and that has in fact been used to raise money, and successfully, but still not enough.
Fred, maybe it should be better advertising the old one.
There are campaigns to burn the mortgage, so to speak, where you can actually go out and once you have the debt, raise the money with the intent of burning the mortgage and getting rid of the debt. But Normie, it's good to be debt-free. I'm speaking as an accountant here now. It's good to be debt-free. It's much better that way. I'm just...
It's better for the people moving into Ottawa who have no capital expenditure for campaign stability. And I think that's another area where we lose, is people who can afford to move into the city don't share in the capital expenditures of the city.
It takes a while for someone moving into a city to get acclimatized and committed to the city. And that, there used to be a program welcoming Shalom. I don't know how successful that's been in the last number of years, and I don't know how active it is, frankly.
Yeah.
But I do know that you do have to acclimatize, and Moishe was right. Montrealers were not made to feel welcome for a long period of time.
It takes about 20.
They were out-of-towners, and it was very, very Ottawa was a very cliquey place. But it does take a while for someone to be committed. And you bring someone into an organization and say, okay, now come help us get rid of the debt because you just brought your kids into Hill Academy, and by the way, now you're taking on this extra debt, isn't a great sell. However, once they're committed, once you can get them committed, I don't disagree with you. Having debt does encourage people to give more because they have their cause, they see the cause. That's why a construction or to get rid of the debt for you guys is for the Ottawa Jewish Community School more difficult than it is for Hillel Lodge to say we're going to go out and build something and we need your money to build it. But I don't know. But if you're recommending, do you have a lot of money to lend that you want to just get more?
I think it's a good point. I think any way we can give motivation to donors to contribute to the community, we ought to look at and we ought to consider. So thank you for that. If there are no other questions, I have one final question for our panel, and it's this. In all of your years of being a leader and a philanthropist, if you had to sum it up in 2 or 3 sentences, what is the key lesson that you've learned over the span of your volunteer career?
I should have said no.
I should have said no.
I just look at it as an obligation, no different than paying taxes. There's no way that as a community or an institution or anything that does good, be it in or outside the Jewish community, can be self-sustained or can be sustained today with the assistance of a government it just doesn't work. I look at giving and asking as an additional tax. There's no way around it. We want better hospital care, better cancer treatment. We want Jewish education. We want Jewish values. We have to pay for it. It's just the reality. And if those values are important to us as a community, then we have to pursue them. And the only way to pursue them is by either is both asking for money and giving money.
I'll just say don't be afraid to ask. That almost always, if you ask the question, I like your question, but you ask the question, and you have a conversation, and something happens from it. And usually something good. So don't be afraid to ask.
And don't be afraid of the answer. Because you will get rejections. You may be disappointed, but don't be afraid. I agree with you. Don't be afraid of the ask. Don't be afraid of the answer, and it's rewarding. What I got out of it is seriously something is self-satisfaction. It's something I feel I've done what I can to try and make, if I can, Ottawa, the Ottawa Jewish community, a better place during my time. I'm concerned that we can't always find the young people like Jessica. You're going to do everything for everybody. I want to let you know that. There just aren't enough young people coming in. Like I sit there going, I did this when I was in my late 20s, early 30s and 40s, 50s. Where are the other 30 and 40-year-olds? That's what I want to know. That's the challenge.
I want to comment on that. They are there. They're just doing it in a different way. It's not traditional. It's not like this environment does it. It's completely different. I witness it because I've got 3 daughters, 25 and under, and I watch them. They're out in the community. They're constantly giving of their time. They're constantly raising money, but in a completely, what many would call, unorthodox way. It's just something that we're not used to yet. And we've got to catch up. We've got to watch them and watch how they're doing it, because there's a whole brand new way of doing it.
And it's the future, right?
Yeah.
It's interesting. After Normie's presentation earlier today, I had a chance to chat with him, and we were reminiscing about the old days of fundraising in Ottawa. How really they'd lock the guys in the room and they'd beat on each other till they came out with the right amount of money. And that was a style and a system of that time. And then we could say we got a little more sophisticated if you want. We can say the hot buttons were different. We could say that people stopped ruling with an iron fist. You could say what you want, but we saw the evolution of fundraising even in our community. And now after Freddie's comment, it's starting to take on the next evolution, the next step of the evolution. And that, I think that's good. I think it's a good thing and a good sign. Normie will reminisce about his days, how he raised money. I'll reminisce about my days. And the next generation, they're already talking about how to help each other do it. Because it's instant now. It's not like we had to wait till Wednesday afternoon where we have a schnapps together and figure out what to do. They do it, they instantly share it, and there's a whole new system taking place that's going to be the future of fundraising for all of us.
So before giving Chuck the final word, Normie?
Just one of the things that a lot of non-Jewish organizations are doing, and I don't think we do enough of it, is stressing the tax advantages of giving capital gains as charity. There's an awful lot of stuff out there that accountants and lawyers are not picking up. The fact is,
I'm the only accountant. What do you mean you're not picking up? 2 lawyers.
2 lawyers, 1 accountant.
I don't.
no cost to the client
I know.
whatsoever by giving money to charity instead of giving it to the government. The government is allowed to give freely of capital gains to charities. They made the law so simple. But for some reason, the Jewish charities have not followed through advertising it and letting people know as well as non-Jewish. The hospitals do it, universities do it big time to allow you to do these things. And I think it's a great way to increase fundraising.
So thank you. Chuck, the final word goes to you about the key lesson that you've learned.
The key lesson that I've learned is the #1 reason that people don't give is because they're not asked.
Very good. Thank you.
Just to ask Jason Poy to come up and deliver some closing remarks. Justin asked one question in the session I moderated this morning. He may have asked other questions. He's the founder and president of his own advertising agency, and when I look at the range of voluntary sector activities he's in, I don't know how you as a president allow yourself the free time, the time away from work to do all the things you do. We look forward to your words.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you. You guys are a pretty energetic group, so I thought I was going to have to talk through a sleeper here. But as I was going through the day, I was just sort of making some notes. And, you know, when I was growing up, I'm from Toronto. And growing up in Toronto, I always wondered what the connection was between the Chinese community and the Jewish community. I thought there was like a culinary conspiracy. Because we always went to Ginsberg and Wong. And then when I was in LA, I had dinner at Genghis Cohen. And I thought, you know what, there's something going on here. But on a more serious note, first of all, I want to thank both the co-chairs, Linda and Jessica, for asking me to come and speak today and close off this conference. It was very educational. I was very surprised, actually, that you thought that question about who asks the donor was controversial, because when I chaired the Chinese Philanthropy Conference, that was sort of one of the first questions, and they were very blunt. They said, yes, we want a Chinese person to ask us. And so I thought that was very interesting, the kinds of differences. First of all, you know, I want to make an observation about the commonalities, but then also the differences as well. One thing I noticed with all the speakers was that in the Jewish community, religion is a huge bedrock of everything that you do, especially in philanthropy, and also the common goal to help Israel. With the Chinese community, unfortunately, we don't have that coherence. We tend to have a loyalty to culture and tradition, not religion, and we have a loyalty to the people, but not a specific homeland. And this, you know, it sometimes, you know, a brutal communist government and followed by a cultural revolution that oppressed, you know, millions of people, that sometimes destroys that. And so what happened was there were a lot of displaced Chinese around the world who were considered overseas Chinese who made money and donated back to the people. They wanted to make sure it benefited the people and not necessarily the country. The other thing is on recognition. So we really talk, when we talk about the Chinese community, we talk about two different groups. I would say the earlier immigrants to Canada are very, very similar to the Jewish community. They're much more established. They've been in Canada for a while. The whole nature of philanthropy and giving back, especially those from Hong Kong, is very, very strong. And then we see the new immigrants that have come from mainland China. And you have to remember that those, I tell charities all the time, those people that are coming right now, those are people that if they have any wealth at all, they have acquired their wealth in the last 30 years. So they basically take the whole definition of nouveau riche to the nth degree. I mean, to go from having nothing in a communist society to being extremely wealthy by any global standards in a period of 3 decades is enough to change anybody's mind in terms of how they think. So when it comes to recognition, it's interesting. What I heard from the panel earlier this morning was that recognition is a way to show your people in your community that you've given, and it might encourage others to give too. And we do see that in the Chinese community. But what we see in the newer community that is coming to Canada, they will help, especially if it's a disaster overseas and whatnot. But they do not like to be known. And they want to help anonymously, usually for tax reasons, because nobody actually knows what the source of their income is. On the next generation, one thing that I've found that is, there's no doubt, the next generation, well, who knows where it's going, but the way that funds are raised is very different from the next generation. But the younger generation that's coming from China, one thing we've noted, and I sort of heard in one of the earlier panels that younger people want something when they give. And the Chinese community sort of takes that one step further, and they actually try and make a deal. And it sort of takes away from the whole spirit of what philanthropy really is. So I'm hoping that our community, my community, can really, look past that business transaction and maybe get back to the roots of what it is to give. Because there are a lot of common beliefs that I've found between what I'm hearing today and also in Chinese tradition of giving back and the sense of family and carrying on to the next generation. In terms of integration, there's a lot less integration between the Chinese community and the broader community than there is with the Jewish community. Now, that could have to do with the fact that language is sometimes an issue, and of course, being a visible minority can play an issue as well. I saw a tweet as I was in the other room. I saw a tweet come across that I think it was Barb Farber who said that at one point, there was a time when there was sort of the token Jew on a board. Well, I can tell you, I'm pretty much the token Chinese guy on a lot of boards. But I have no problem with that because I always tell my friends, I say, listen, use that to get on the board. And once you're on the inside, you can do whatever you want. And you can use that position to try and, change that mindset. Because right now, there's still a lot of, it might be the whole language issue. It might be the fact that, the Chinese culture is filled with tradition and weird superstitions. But there's that whole, a lot of charities seem to find that there's like this magic key that needs to be unlocked, and they need at least one board member that can unlock the secret, And I can do the fortune cookie, ancient Chinese secret stuff just as well as anybody else. But I like to, bring it back down to earth and say, look, I'm part of the board here. So if you're on a mission, let me help you fulfill that, and I can play a role. But don't just send me off into the woods and tell me to come back with a check, right? And I would say that, it's very interesting. In Toronto, there's a suburb called Richmond Hill. And just recently, this is how far superstition can go. And trust me, superstitions are nowhere near as solid as referring back to the base of a religion. Because people use it for convenience. So the town council met, and I don't know how many of you know about Chinese superstition, but the number 4, is considered bad luck. And in Chinese, they choose lucky words and bad lucky words based on rhymes. And the number 4 in many Asian languages, including Japanese and Korean, is the same phonetic sound as death. And that's why, for example, anybody use a Canon PowerShot here? Well, they went from G3 and they jumped to G5. There's no G4. And I guarantee you with PlayStation, there will be no PlayStation 4. It'll jump from 3 to 5. So it's the same kind of thing. So town council met. I mean, it's 2013. They met. And they said they will no longer issue the number 4 on any new developments, any homes. And I thought, that really defies logic, you know. And people came out and said, well, the price of their homes were being affected. My neighbor didn't have the number 4, and they sold it a certain amount, and mine is the number 4, and it's not being valued accordingly. So, you know, those kind of things are just sort of very trivial, but I find it amazing how strong that is in the Chinese community and how seriously people take that, especially in fundraising. But at the end of the day, we are one country, and that is what I love about the title of AFP's conference, From Diversity to Inclusion. So I love the fact that we're talking about the diversity, but at the end of the day, this is all about inclusion. And I'll finish off with a story. So the first time I think I ever had surgery was when I was 10 or 12. I had some extra teeth removed. And then I went home, and everything was fine. And then about 6 hours later, it started to bleed. And it just kept bleeding, and I got rushed back to the hospital. Anyway, finally, they gave me a couple of blood transfusions. It stopped. And this was going on after year after year. You know, I'd break legs and all sorts of surgeries. And always, I'd get home, and 6 hours later, I'd start bleeding again. Now, I had heard some story that my grandfather had all his top teeth removed. This is my paternal grandfather, and he also had the same issue. So finally I said, listen, I need to see a hematologist, and I got to get this sorted out. So I went to Toronto General Hospital, had all my blood examined, and they came back in the room, and I was there with my parents, and the doctor said, so where's the Jewish part of your family? And I looked around and said, Jewish part of the family? Well, no, what are you talking about? So apparently, I was missing factor number 11, which is equivalent to, it's called hemophilia C. And this is also known as Rosenthal syndrome. And it only ever shows up in the, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Ashkenaz Jews. And I have it. So I looked at my grandfather and I said, hey man, is there a story you haven't told me? I'll leave you with that. Thank you very much.
So it doesn't matter if there's a food connection between Chinese and Jews. Clearly, Justin, that was a terrific way to round out the day. Thank you very much. I was hoping that you would do some comparisons. I think that for all of us who know that there were 2 sessions in Toronto, one with the Chinese community, one with the South Asian, are most anxious to know what was going on there, because of course we'd like to know how the Jewish community, our experiences compare with those of other immigrant groups. So thank you very much for that really very, very interesting summation. And here's a little card for you. Thank you. As the final speaker, I have many other thank yous to distribute. First of all, to Linda and Jessica Kersner for their enormous contribution as conference co-chairs and MCs, and for their participation on a panel. And from my time in that room, it was excellent. Thank you to all of the speakers. Without you, we wouldn't have had the fantastic day we've had. Not all of the speakers were able to stay, but really for all of you who are here, thank you very much. It's been, I can only speak for those of us who put this together, a day that really has exceeded our expectations in terms of the quality of the presentations, the superb questions, the energy in all of the panels. And so I think we all will come away feeling we've learned a huge amount. I also want to thank a range of volunteers who gave their time and expertise to help organize the event. I'm reluctant to name names because I will doubtless omit someone, but I can certainly see 3 people in the room whom I know put in many hours, 4 people in the room, and I want on Leah's behalf and on mine to thank all of you for that. Finally, those of you without whom we wouldn't have had a session today, those who came because they wanted to learn about philanthropy in the Jewish community, thank you very much. I've been asked to advise you that there will be an evaluation emailed to you on Tuesday, and although it's not on the note, I assume I'm also should also say please return the evaluation as soon as you can so that the organizers can benefit from your wisdom. You're welcome to stay for a few minutes and mix and mingle, but again, on your behalf, let me thank Leah and her team for having put together an absolutely superb day.